When you have loved ones or friends who need help handling their daily affairs, whether they are elderly or disabled, relatives or neighbors, and you believe they need a guardian to handle those affairs, and when all other alternatives aren't realistic or have not worked, it often becomes necessary to file what is called an interdiction in the Louisiana court system. In Louisiana, the legal term for a guardianship of an adult is called an interdiction. Your friend or relative is referred to as the potential interdict. The person appointed to be the guardian is called the curator. In addition, the court appoints what is called an under-curator, who has certain oversight duties. Video number 2. What do you have to do once you are appointed the curator?
One of the most common questions is, what do I have to do if I get appointed as the curator? After you've exhausted all other alternatives and you feel that you need to become the person's curator and file for guardianship, the first thing you should do is ask the doctor for a written report explaining why the person can't make decisions and why a guardian would be necessary. Secondly, you should make a list of all of the assets and income that the individual has so that you can report this to the court and discuss it with the attorney. When you have that information and meet with the attorney, you'll be discussing what's called a petition for interdiction, which is what we call guardianship in Louisiana. At that point, and the court will decide whether or not you're going to become the curator of the person to make medical and residential decisions, or the curator of the finances to make financial decisions, or both. At that point, the court will issue a written judgment explaining what your duties are. You only have the duties that the court allows you to have in that judgment. So you will need to consult the judgment to specifically know what your duties will be and be able to report those to others. You will have only the powers that the court grants you. You won't be able to legally do anything until you have filed an oath with the clerk of court. The oath explains that you will faithfully fulfill your duties. At that point, you may have to post bond unless the judge decides to waive it if the interdict does not have sufficient assets to make it worthwhile for a bond. After you have filed the oath, the court will issue what's called letters of curatorship. You will need to have both of these documents in order to proceed. When you go to the bank or the Social Security office or a doctor or a hospital, take both documents with you. They will need to see both the judgment and the letters of curatorship to know what authority you have to make decisions. Remember that your responsibility is to act in the best interests of the interdict. If the interdict can understand and communicate with you, try to involve the interdict in making decisions. After a year, or at any time the court orders it, you will be required to file what's called a report with the court, explaining what's happened to the interdict over the past year. Record keeping is going to make this easier. What I recommend is that you keep a notebook with significant events in it, like medical appointments, hospitalizations, medication changes, things like that you can explain to the court how things have occurred for the interdict. Remember, one of your main responsibilities is to make medical appointments for the interdict and see that they are kept, and to see that the interdict gets any medications refilled. In regard to reporting financial matters to the court, you might want to open a separate checking account for the interdict. This will help keep track of the interdict's income and expenses in a much clearer way for both you and the court. In order to do that, you should take the judgment and letters to the bank and ask to open an interdiction checking account. The biggest problem we find for curators is that they are not able to prove how they spent the interdict's funds and that they spent them on the interdict. So, keep receipts for all major expenditures made with the interdict's funds, and keep those receipts with the interdict's monthly bank statement so that you can show the court, if needed, how you prove the expenses that you paid for. And at any time where you have major financial transactions, remember to consult with the under-curator. In some situations, visits with family and friends may become an issue. I recommend that you keep a record of all visits that have occurred, when they've occurred, and where they've occurred, and perhaps how long they've occurred. You will file all this type of information every year with the clerk of court's office. In order to see more about filing reports, please watch our section called what do I have to report to the court? I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.
A supporting PDF document of video number 2 is available at the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs website, goea.la.gov. For next steps, go to video number 3. What are the duties of the curator of the person?